How does machine learning differ from artificial intelligence?
Machine learning would recommend this skill is missing from your profile, right? It's kind of like choose one of 50,000 some odd options. AI understands how your career trajectory and the school that you went to and the way that you describe what you did, like the gestalt of it. There are, real material technical differences between classical machine learning techniques and modern AI techniques. There are a lot of pieces they have in common, but I think it's more of a difference in kind. We talk about AI and it's artificially intelligent. I'm planning this Elcon and it helps me with my meal planning.
Having created Dolly, Workday, LinkedIn, why did you decide to tackle this particular challenge to assist humans?
The fact is that these things can, with increasing fidelity and over increasingly long time horizons, get things done for you, meets an intrinsic interest in understanding how the world actually is and how markets and transactions are structured and function. And it was a very, very natural place to start.
Information that is selected a result of and is simply mimicking or representing, it's a product of its environment. It's almost a reflection of the people with which it interacts. And therefore, that scares the hell out of me.
Just to kind of play that out a little bit, these systems are not alive. They're not conscious. I think of algorithms as kind of like whirlpools or eddies in time, in the way that a business is like a collection of self-organizing actors that lead to this. It's like why we've given corporate personhood. It's like it is a thing that is made up of these individuals, but it changes over time. And I think of the algorithm as kind of similar in the weights and the data that flows through it changes over time, but we still have, we colloquially would talk about the Facebook newsfeed algorithm. And so it is like this thing that has a life of its own. And it's not that it has wants, but it acts on its environment as though it did have wants.
I am very lucky that I get to sit and talk with a lot of brilliant people in this podcast. I'm not sure that I've ever come across anybody with the wisdom and insight that today's guest, Mike Conover, has when it comes to artificial intelligence and technology in general. Mike has a fascinating window into the world through which he looks and is able to articulate a very unique way what AI is, his company is doing with it, and how it's going to impact you and I in the years to come. I was floored and fascinated by this discussion, and I think you guys will be too. Boundary Breakers is brought to you by Carter & Clark. Well, Mike, again, I thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I've been looking forward to this one. Do me a favor and just give us a little bit about your background, where you came from, family life, and how you sort of got to this point.
Well, appreciate it. Yeah. And it's truly my pleasure to have the opportunity. Thanks so much for that, Brandon. Well, let's see. I am an engineer by training and have been doing this, building AI products for the better part of 15, almost 20 years at this point. So have a PhD in a field called complexity science. So, machine learning intensive discipline focused on the emergent properties of systems composed of many interacting entities. So you think about the global economy or traffic or biological organisms, that organization and organism share a common root word is not an accident. And it speaks to that nested hierarchical structure of self-organizing systems. You have atoms compose proteins, compose tissues, compose organs, compose bodily systems, compose people, compose teams, compose businesses, compose the economy. That sort of central through line, my PhD work dealt with how social media, we had access to the Twitter data set very, very early on, since 2009. DARPA funded research on the structure of political polarization and propaganda campaigns, and just, understanding how social media is going to shape the political discourse at the scale of very, very large groups of people. That took me to LinkedIn, where I built homepage newsfeed relevance. So you go to linkedin.com, you'd see our updates. Published some pretty interesting work in a journal called Nature on how 500 million job transitions are predictive of next quarter S&P 500 market cap changes. So you could see that being a signal at a semi-systematics desk at a hedge fund.
Yeah.
We shared that finding on, high talent labor flows, and joined a startup, machine learning startup after that. That company was acquired by Workday. And that there, I spent 4 years there as the director of machine learning for their financials product line. And most recently was at Databricks prior to Brightwave, where I created their first language model. So an open source model called Dolly that demonstrated that open source technologies could behave like ChatGPT. This was about 5 months after 3.5 came out. It was really, really not obvious how that was possible. And we found that it was orders of magnitude cheaper and more feasible for teams to train language models that respond in a conversational manner. And that, was an incredible journey. And the through line then to Brightwave is we have in language models. So Brightwave is a system. It's a research platform that can take very, very large collections of documents. And that can be in any type of document. So our primary market are financial services firms, but you think about scientific research or understanding the insurance risk profile of a very large entity, or clinical trials analysis for drug discovery. This system is able to, we use it for sales call review. Actually, we take hundreds of hours of call transcripts and understand what are the value propositions that are resonating, what are the blockers that are coming up. How, it's a system that's able to perceive more than a human can. And with language models, you have this system that is able to critique and refine its own work. And in finance, you have a very, very acute pain point, which is getting to conviction on an investment decision at speed, under time pressure in a very competitive, relatively efficient market. And then making informed decisions on an ongoing basis about how you're steering the ship. And we see, the future of AI as being very much one of collaboration between humans and these systems that expand your expressive capacity. We see that most acutely at Brightwave in terms of how we use software engineering tools to generate AI-powered software engineering tools to generate code. It's not that I don't have things to do with my time. I'm just able to do in minutes things that would have taken weeks, and I'm just able to get to so much faster.
That is unbelievable and almost mind-boggling. All right, so
it is crazy.
I want to back up a little bit. So the first thing that strikes me is you have, from what I can tell, been in AI long before AI was cool or mainstream, I should say.
Good long
Is that
while.
fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been studying it for a long time.
And so I think as a non-tech person, I hear things like machine learning in terms. Walk me through, how does machine learning differ from artificial intelligence, or is it different sides of the same coin?
Yeah, they're related but different. There's the sort of mathematical and technical dimension, but then there's also the colloquial aspect, which is potentially more relevant to your listeners. So I would say machine learning, if you think about how Google created the money printers they own, it was on the back of what you would call classical machine learning methods. And so kind of from 2000 onward, you had, so think of a lot of businesses, not so much as the product, but rather as systems for instrumenting human decision making, like a lot of internet businesses. What is, Uber, I need a car. What is the most efficient way I can route a vehicle based on real-time telemetry data from that car to that person so that I can push a button and get a taxi? Google learns preferences at a planetary scale from impression and action data. I saw something, I didn't click on it. Well, now I know something about what you don't like. That activity of instrumenting human decision-making using digital trace data underpinned probably first 15 years from 2000 to 2015 of advances in machine learning. And you had systems that were very economically useful. Like you could predict if somebody's going to click on an ad, kind of at its most base level, very, very efficiently, but they were not expressive. It was kind of like rigid. The same mathematical techniques that you would use to optimize those systems underpin deep learning or neural networks, or the class of machine learning technologies that we talk about when we talk about AI. Both computer vision models as well as the image generation models and LLMs, kind of most famously. And so I think there are real material technical differences between classical machine learning techniques and modern AI techniques. There are a lot of pieces they have in common, but I think it's more of a difference in kind.
Gotcha.
Where we talk about AI and it's artificially intelligent. I'm planning this elk hunt and it helps me with my meal planning.
Gotcha.
It's like that.
Gotcha.
Goodness, if that doesn't seem smart.
Right. Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, it's almost like it's sort of the difference in the way that you can potentially interact with that, right? Where I could follow you, totally understand. You talked about LinkedIn, for example, right? If you had machine learning, the software could identify preferences and understand what to put into your feed.
Yeah.
But that is far different than being able to go to and interact with an LLM in a conversational way, right?
Yeah. And to kind of riff on that a little bit, you can think of it in terms of like how much representative capacity, like for semantic nuance, do they have? So like to use the link example,
yeah,
machine learning would recommend this skill is missing from your profile, right? It's kind of like choose one of 50,000 some odd options. AI understands how your career trajectory and the school that you went to and the way that you describe what you did, like the gestalt of it. And
gotcha.
it's part because these models are so much larger. They just have more free parameters. And also how they're trained. It's like the game to play is, pick a trillion numbers and make sure that they're useful. And it's like
Right.
we recently have had the hardware infrastructure and the mathematical methods to do that.
Yeah, that's it. It's fascinating, right? So, I mean, you're obviously brilliant and have the background and experience, having created Dolly, Workday, LinkedIn. I mean, all sort of world class stuff. So you decide to start Brightwave. What was it about financial documents in particular? Why did you decide to tackle this particular challenge?
Yeah.
To assist humans.
Well, so you think about the opportunity cost of time in this market. It's extremely high. And the more you talk to investors, the more you realize that a lot of their work is like control Fing through collections of documents to make sure that you're not missing anything. And that there's this feeling that not only do I need to get this IC memo template filled out, say, but also I need to make a high confidence bet on having known everything that was material to this opportunity. And there's this long tail of risks that just don't, related party transaction risks that are disclosed in a sub footnote of a footnote. And it's just like, it was knowable at the time we signed and we didn't discover it. That's an extremely like high penalty to pay. And the through line, of having considered how do markets work? How do people make decisions? I for a time did algorithmic sports betting on UFC fights.
Okay.
And the like, how do you learn something that nobody else has seen is in large sense, is a function of how efficiently you distill information from what is knowable, what is being disclosed. And so with language models, and particularly agents, which are able to pursue work independently and then they can generate a set of inferences, and then another system can look at that and say, are these all factually supported by the underlying primary sources? Is everything cited and linked to the original documents? Is this interesting or insightful? It's an incredible property of language models that the same model can review its own work. And I could talk about mathematically why that's the case. I don't know that it's particularly interesting, but the fact is that these things can, with increasing fidelity and over increasingly long time horizons, get things done for you, meets an intrinsic interest in understanding how the world actually is and how markets and transactions are structured and function. And it was a very, very natural place to start.
Yeah. No, that actually makes perfect sense the way that you explain. I mean, in my world, what I hear is, or what I think about is that, particularly private business transactions are made, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of these transactions are executed, each quarter, all on imperfect information that ends up being sort of somebody's hunch because, how could you read every single document and every single, possible permutation or circumstance? So it's interesting. So you've decided to harness artificial intelligence to improve both the digestion and availability of relevant information for these critical decisions that manifest themselves in financial transactions.
Yeah, and kind of practically, like that looks like I need a report on this team's patent portfolio, or I need a report on all of the companies that have raised capital in the past 6 months in ed tech space, or I want to understand all of my portfolio companies' exposure to the war in Ukraine, for example. Or in these other markets, Eli Lilly's clinical trials. I want to understand, are there ingestible delivery mechanisms for semaglutide drugs that are, showing promising results, and do that screen across all the competitive set. It's like the ability to bring in, we have SEC filings, web search, cloud drives, all of these different sources of information, then synthesize across them and create deliverables. I think that from a product standpoint, that's where AI is moving towards. It's like, I don't care so much about the sausage making. I want
right.
Sausage.
Yeah.
I need a report on this. I need a set of slides on this. I need this chart, this table. You see this in, like, think about incident management or customer support ticket resolution or booking an Airbnb. I don't care how you get it done. It just needs to be right, and it needs to exist.
Gotcha.
And that's a difference from chat, which is more like I'm actively involved in the work.
Right.
And we at Brightwave have built a system that lets you steer the attention of these agents, but they work independently.
It's just so hard to believe. I mean, it is.
I mean, I'll show it after the podcast.
Oh, no.
Give you a demo. It's fantastic. And we, candidly, let me say a little bit about hard to believe. There is a lot of hype in this space.
Yeah.
That's what's so, like, there are a lot of teams that do not have the goods, and so they make the products hard to buy. And you want to get your hands on it. Like, it works. It works perfectly on this garden path just so demo, but then it falls over in a stiff wind. So Brightwave, anybody can try it. We do 7-day trials, and it's just like it just works as described, and we've solved some fundamental technical challenges, and we have a beautiful UI. And so it is hard to believe. And I think your skepticism is warranted and appropriate.
Well, and I want to make sure. I mean, I want to make sure that I'm clear on that. I say that not at all to suggest that that I'm unable to believe your claims.
I get it.
But that the technology exists to be able to execute that.
At this point in human history,
I'd love to ask just a couple of questions. I'm trying to wrap my mind around sort of the universe of things that this could do, right?
Sure.
So I'd love to ask a couple of questions about, what it can do. And then after that, I'd love to see if you can explain to somebody who's not very smart like myself, generally how in the world it can do those things. But so, I mean, I come from a background having done a bunch of acquisitions, and I think about. I mean, I could rattle off a couple of use cases where it would have been had there been more due diligence, or had there been this contingency taken into account. It costs a lot of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So can Brightwave ingest the information that's provided and then foresee potential risks in a deal, or should you combine these businesses, here are the potential risks that need to be at least managed or mitigated? Or is it all sort of backward looking?
No, it is absolutely what you've just described. Like here's a set of facts about these entities, and spread over dozens, hundreds. We support thousands and thousands of documents in these data rooms in these projects. Um, Tick and tie across the acquirer and the to be acquired, their exposure with respect to the growth model, right? Like, oh, maybe this entity really relies on this European regulatory regime for their product to be competitive, and this entity has an America first manufacturing posture. That, if you think about like all of the relationships between all of the facts in those two entities, for a human to cross correlate and remember, 40 pages later, this growth model is at odds with the stated objectives of the acquirer. It's like, that's going to come up maybe in those management calls, but you've sunk 6 hours into that deal.
Right.
It's like, goodness, okay, there's nothing to do here. So not only is it spotting those relationships and then presenting it to a human, it's, and getting to some of that finished work product. If you're trying to like, get to a memo on this opportunity, but it's also just like, what should we talk about? That's, going back to this elk hunting example, I asked it to recommend 35, 40 boil and bag meals that I can freeze and reheat in a camper. And I just kind of shop through that menu, and it's like, it's not going to know my tastes. There's
Right.
things that it's just, it doesn't have that information. Much like the inventory of risks that you might be presented with in a deal, it's like, here are 15 potential speed bumps for us. You're going to know which 3 are material. And so it's
Right.
that ability to spot those factors, and then, the system, it lets you, we think of it kind of like a magnifying glass for text. You can zero in on one of them and say, well, tell me more about that. And now I get an analysis of this particular factor, and you can kind of keep pulling those threads. Happy to talk about at a sort of layman's level how that's possible.
Yeah.
I also don't need to spend the whole time talking about what we built. Like, it's incredible, but only to the extent that it's of interest to you and your listeners.
No, it is. And look, a lot of, I mean, what is extraordinarily interesting, fascinating even, is understand. I mean, you live it. You live in the world of AI every day, right? But understanding the current bounds of artificial intelligence, what
Yeah.
tools that are out there that are truly utilizing artificial intelligence, and what that means for, whether it's today or next month or next year, what that means in business and in our lives. And from what I've heard, I mean, the ability to ingest or digest and then provide, not just spitting out or regurgitating the facts, but to identify the important ones and potential scenarios that need for either further discussion or further research. That to me, that's invaluable, and that I can see why you would want. I mean, it seems to me like that's maybe one of the best opportunities out there in terms of monetizing something, because of the amount of capital that is put at risk
Yeah.
based off these decisions.
Goodness gracious, it's eye-opening when you sort of think about the scale. And you're talking, sometimes these are like 3 and 4 person deal teams, and you're swinging tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's just like, it's a, like, you step back a little bit, it's like, it's a fair bit of exposure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Not for nothing. Um, so maybe we can talk a little bit about like how AI software engineering looks, and
Yeah.
this maybe to kind of like make it more um, of general interest and
Sure.
less about like the business we're building at Brightwave. But
Of course.
we're inspired so much by. Have you ever heard the quote, "The future is already here; it's just not evenly distributed"?
Yes.
Okay, I think that is what is happening in AI and software engineering is an incredibly good lesson, or like object lesson, with respect to that quote. So most people's experience of AI tools are ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. It's a chat window. And it's like I send a message, I wait 10 seconds for the response to come, and it like basically tells me jokes or bedtime stories for my kids, XYZ. Um, there's a thought that class of behaviors has what's called saturated. Our ability to detect continuing improvements in model capabilities for that dialogue based chat experience, it's like, how much better can it possibly be? Like, sure, it could write more like a real poet, or but it's the depth of insight in terms of like what you and I have in terms of daily driver use cases in our non-professional lives. We're already kind of at superhuman intelligence. It's better at meal planning. It's better at, help me put together a fishing trip. It is better at, you know, help me understand how I would cook this, based on a photo. It's just better than any human at that stuff. Where the real frontier is, and engineers are exposed to this, and this will wash over the rest of the world soon, is if you think about software engineering, you're dealing with lots of files. They have complex interrelated structure, um, and what you're seeing is that software engineers. They used to have the one screen, which is the file I'm editing. Now there are two, and there's a chat window that sits on the side, and that chat window is evolved, and now we're starting to see structure emerge in those sets of interactions, where instead of just you know I ask a message, give me a function that does the following thing. The AI agent is modifying many, many different files at a time, and what it does is it inspects, it generates a set of changes to the code, and then it looks at those changes and says, "Have I satisfied the original user's request?" And now, because it's generated all of that those tokens, it has more information about, is this the right solution to the problem? And it can say yes or no. Either you're done, or you should keep going. And now in software engineering, you use what are called unit tests. And that's a way to say, if I want to know if a number is prime, I would have a unit test to assess whether that is true. Or, I want to extract the zip code from an address. The unit test is a set of examples, and then here's what I would expect this result to be then. So you can say, are the tests passing? And that can be a stopping criterion. And what you do is put that system in a loop where you say, you don't get to give up until the tests are passing. And you put together a plan for really complex asks. The system's able to define, here's how I'm going to decompose this into little subtasks, and I'm going to pick each of those off in turn. And that ability to define a plan, execute on subcomponents of it, assess, am I done yet, has, for everybody who is using AI to write software, and the leading teams, it's more than half of the code is now written by AI. It's just, in the past 9 months, the way a software engineer works has completely changed. It's hard to communicate to somebody who's not in it the degree to which it is just a different job now.
Wow. Well,
That is going to affect everybody else.
that is hard to sort of grasp. So us non-software engineers, that is sort of, you know, gets to the top of the news cycle every now and then, right? Like Mark Benioff at Salesforce, they're not going to hire any new engineers because,
Sure.
but the way that it is, at least maybe it's the way I've interpreted it, is that they have AI models that are writing all of the software, as opposed to what you described, where you have humans writing but have a AI agent to assist in that writing. So are you saying that the well, help me understand the difference. Why wouldn't you just ask it to write the whole thing, I guess?
Well, so taste is the rare commodity in the future. Like, who
Okay.
has judgment? You
Yeah,
you got to have somebody like
I got you.
the central question in the age of AI is, what do I want? How shall the world be? We have these systems that can do anything, create this molecule to treat this drug, find a more efficient way to store battery, material design for the battery systems that bridge renewables and data centers. The challenge is probably, it's, have you read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Oh yeah,
It's like
it's
you've
the
got
question.
the
Yeah,
gene that produces the answer, and it's like,
right.
what is the question?
So yeah, I mean, if you want to build a home, like if I mean, I've got
Yes.
a family, I want to build a house. Just because there's a robot that can build the house
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I would just say, okay, build it, right? I want
How do you want to
it
be in
built, right? How
space?
many bedrooms, what it looks like. Okay, I got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it.
Yeah, and so I think there's an interesting wrinkle here, which is that like articulating preferences is actually very hard. Like that's classically the work of product management. Is to you and I ask, there's this tool called Claude Code that'll build apps for you. You and I ask for a workout app. What you would want is going to be different from what I would want. And left to its own devices, these systems predict the next most likely word in a sentence, roughly. And so it's going to create a generic workout app that's going to be different in meaningful ways from our needs. And so the real skilled professionals in the future are going to be those individuals who can really clearly articulate what is useful and then like discern from the environment what are the needs and like concretize those in a way that a system that is just trying to realize the thing that's been asked for, it has a lighthouse to steer by.
Right.
And I think you're going to see, call it a Cambrian explosion of single proprietor businesses where you don't have to have a technical background in order to create something really useful. You just have to see the opening.
Right.
And that's extremely exciting. Now, I think a lot of people also don't want to have to write everything down and what they want in a workout app.
Right.
And they just want the good one. And so, like, I think there's
Jeez.
going to be a future where you have people who have expertise in like product and taste cultivation, and not everything's going to be like I have to describe every app that I want on my phone.
Really cool. Yeah. I suspect if I were to ask every member of the Boundary Breakers audience what they want to know about or what's fascinating or interesting or what they would question, I still believe, and this may be sort of last year's issue for you because you're so far out on the frontier, but the really trying to get a grasp of how AI is going to change the world, and that is the. I mean, I don't know if I can't speak in cliches or be so general, but anytime there's something that is unknown, people don't like it. People, you got over here, you got people that say that it's going to ruin the world and there's going to be no jobs left. And then over here, it's no, it's just going to change the world. It's just going to change how we interact with it. I don't know what I'm talking about, but my intuition tells me that it's not going to put everybody out of business, but it's going to be a net positive that just changes the way that we used to do things and what is and what isn't valuable, in a way that you just articulated, right? I mean, the sort of shifts the value from somebody that knows how to code to somebody that can articulate the specifics of what is important in building the code. What are your general thoughts on where and how quickly we're headed into a materially different
Yeah.
day-to-day world?
So I think that it is likely that the largest impact. So let's break it down along three dimensions: scientific, sort of behavioral, societal, like how do we relate to one another, and then economic. I think the scientific aspect is our ability to identify, trial, and ship to market new drugs that solve classically intractable diseases, I think will be people who are in a position to say this confidently and with the technical receipts to back it up. We're looking at, months, not years for those clinical trial pipelines. And I think you just look at what just human health and flourishing as the sort of foundation of like, do we live in a functioning and civic society? Like, are we cut from straight timber? It's like that, I think, will have a profound effect on the planet. I think energy is in the same vein, right? Like, you may or may not know, but like, in the early 20th century, there was a real panic about the productivity of arable land and like how many calories you could get from an acre of crop. And it was like, we see this exponential growth in population. You think about like climate change in this lens, we see this exponential growth in population, like reasonable people forecasting, like this is a problem. We're going to have mass famine. And then we discovered a chemical reaction that takes ammonia or nitrogen from the air and creates ammoniated fertilizers. And you couldn't do it because it was so energy inefficient. Then we found just a fundamental chemical reaction that does that energy efficiently. And we increased by 10x crop productivity. You think about like, can we sequester carbon from the atmosphere? Well, we don't know how to do it efficiently right now. Can we store, can we have batteries that last for eons? Can we have nuclear reactions that are extremely efficient and create byproducts that have half-lives of weeks, not decades? I think all of those things are on the menu for us, and we're just bringing in those timelines. So I think the scientific component is like number one. I'll be a little briefer on the second two.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah, like the societal and behavioral stuff, I think is like where we might get a little over our skis. So if you think about social media and its effects on how we relate, my information no longer comes to me through my relationships. It's mediated through the internet. And so I don't need to talk to my neighbor to find out about the like bluegrass festival. I just like, what's happening. And so like that, and also like preferences being sort of like hyper optimized, leads to basically where we are. If you think about AI as a system where I no longer have to seek out other humans for the relational emotional component of like it's like in long distance relationships are like that's a thing people do. People are in relationships, at their love, at college. We already know that humans are capable of this. And so like, hey, I have a texting relationship or a hyper realistic video relationship with somebody who doesn't exist. It's like not that different from what we are already capable of. I think we really need to grapple with what is going to happen. Now there's real positive aspects there too, which is like, you think about elder care is like kind of a classical example. You've got a lot of people who are fairly lonely, and it's like, is it better to be lonely or to have an AI companion? I think there's some real ethical questions there. So societally, I think it's like more of a mixed bag. And then economically, in terms of jobs, I'm firmly of the conviction that humans are fundamentally resourceful and creative creatures. And I recognize that knowledge work is different from a lot of I have to show up. I gotta take the groceries and put them across the checkout aisle like that. It's like those are, I'm not trying to say like every job is the same as writing code, but it's absolutely the case that with respect to software engineering, we are able to accomplish more in the same unit time. And it's not like I'm sitting around looking for things to do because I like, well, now the thing writes it's like my capacity is increased. This is definitely the case with Brightwave users. I'm able to get in a matter of minutes what would have taken me a week, and now I'm on to the next thing. And I think when you think about like clerking, some of these more rote tasks. I think that we've had humans in those roles because somebody had to do it. And you ever heard the phrase bullshit jobs?
Oh yeah.
It's like I think there's like a cynicism in the economy where it's like, I'll pretend to work, I'll pretend to work, you'll pretend that this matters. And it's this like cynical transaction. And I think that's degrading to the human spirit. And it's kind of a byproduct of 20th and 21st century capitalism. And I'm a capitalist for dead rights. I think that we will see a flourishing with respect to like those rote, tedious activities no longer necessarily being done by humans, and that for the connective, there's going to be whole classes of things that businesses at every level of the economy are able to do, whether it's better customer service or more connected relationships or better, sales prospecting. You're just going to be able to do more things that are uniquely human. And I think there may be a dignifying and like uplifting out of kind of like morass of like, well, somebody's got to do the bureaucratic lifting, and like, we're just going to throw people at it.
Wow. That's the most well articulated answer or response that is specific about a product of artificial intelligence that I've heard.
Appreciate that.
I watched Sam Altman on Tucker Carlson, asked him some really interesting ethical questions. I'm sure you've probably seen just about how AI will interact with the human race, but that's fascinating. So, like the soul crushing jobs that people are currently engaged in to try to make ends meet and pay rent will be taken by the machines, while the more fulfilling, less damaging jobs will be for the humans. And the net effect of that will be less widespread soul crushing.
I hope so. Yeah.
I mean,
who knows? Nobody has a crystal ball.
I know, but
yeah.
I'm sick. I can't stand the generalized negativity, that is so frequent about, it's going to blah, 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 it's going to be the worst.
So, when you ski or snowboard, this also happens in like combat sports, like you go where you're looking, like you kind of turn the direction of your head and like your body.
Yes.
That happens with technology, with society. Like your intentions become manifest as reality, but at a planetary scale. And like concrete example, it's like no accident that Apple products look like 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's like we had this vision of what the future would look like, and that imprinted itself in the collective consciousness, and the market demanded things that looked futuristic and clean and minimalist and white. It like this just happens. We create the world that we set our intentions on. And so I think there is something to like saying, I will create products, I will create technologies that design for a world in which human flourishing is the objective function, rather than some other dark, like Black Mirror inevitability. I just think that is defeatist and like kind of abdicates responsibility. And I think that's a lame way to live your life.
I totally could not agree more. I mean, so you're currently with Brightwave, disrupting and making a gigantic impact on something that I think I can clearly see the value. If for some reason you had to move on or that wasn't available, are there other solutions, which God forbid doesn't happen? Because
where are you going with this?
If you were for some reason forced to solve another issue or challenge or create another business, what would that be? And maybe maybe a better way to answer it, Mike, would be, what do you see as opportunities that other people have not yet leveraged?
No, I mean, I'll give you two. I think this is definitely my big bet. Like it is, and I don't mean that in like a defensive way. It's just like, I think this is a huge idea and a huge market opportunity. A lot of the other stuff that I think would be interesting to do is like much more niche. but these are products I would love to. If somebody else wants to build it, I will buy it. I think designing high quality materials for kids that are like pedagogically tailored to their capabilities and interests, I think is an incredible opportunity. And so like the kind of simplest example of that is like making a storybook that features my kids. But you can have content on any subject that is like like you can take standardized test results, like, the detailed rubrics of capabilities for a child, visual spatial processing, like across every dimension that you can measure. Present that to an AI and say, I want an age appropriate brief on Zeno's paradox for this kid. And also, like, give me 3 other really, really interesting thought exercises in philosophy, and use techniques like scaffolding and then like activity questions to create like this thing that is like irresistible and changes you as a person. And I think about like how students use AI now, and there's a difference between having an essay and writing an essay. Writing an essay is the process of like refining what you think. Having an essay is just an essay. It's somebody else's work. I think AI is this incredible opportunity for education, and it's about how to use it. And I think there's an opportunity to put people on rails that like lead them to those really, really virtuous ways of interacting with the tools. And I think a lot about trip planning. Like I spend a lot of time in the outdoors now, mediated by AI. And I find I was going to a fish camp a couple months ago at this point, that I'd been planning for half a year. And I had a buddy flying out. And the night before at 11 o'clock, I was like, there's some smoke in the air. I should probably like look at the road into the camp, which is 40 miles into the backcountry, was on fire. And one way in and one way out. And I just kind of made a decision. I'm like, I'm not going to risk that. It's just too, like, I'm not going to drive into a forest fire to like go for a bunch of reasons. And I was able to, in 2 hours, the day before I was planning to leave, and I had a guy flying in from California, put together an entirely alternate itinerary with like specific lakes and individual cabins and like just this bomber. Like, it's like I had a great time. And the ability to, I think there's a real gap right now in terms of the product surfaces where you ask ChatGPT for trip recommendations, you don't get maps. You don't have the ability to like drill into specific locations. You can't say more like they give me 3 other options that look like this, but are a little different in this way. Like, I think there's, I'm sure people are working on this, but it's like, I do not currently use a tool that solves that problem. I think that's a very, very interesting opportunity.
That's pretty fascinating. So, I mean, both of those are sort of hyper curated solutions based on very individualized.
Yeah, they're like consumer
attributes.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think those are fantastic. I think those are great. I mean, that's not anything I would come up with. But it sort of opened something in my mind to think about other ways that, that it's so powerful, it being artificial intelligence generally. There's so many things. I think you're right. There's just so many things it could potentially do that are otherwise impossible without that power. I have no other way to say it, right? But like you said, standardized tests. This kid is super strong with language skills, but isn't as technically proficient with mathematical reasoning. And so create a book that incorporates football and alligators, which they love, to teach them that stuff without even knowing they're being taught.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's one of these ways where like you incentivize, you create businesses and products that incentivize pro-social behaviors. And it's like, that's that's like a founder's choice as to like, what will I breathe into the world? And I think there's
Yeah,
some merit to being intentional about that.
for sure. And sort of on that front, you articulated very well, I think, sort of where we are as a society and why, because of social media, right? That it, we are we're uh, experiencing information not just from our five senses interacting,
Yeah.
but from something else. And so that creates, the relationships are fewer and far between in our lives. I'm curious about one other aspect of that. Not only is it coming from something else other than relationships, but it's also curated by something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is like, so if it were just coming from a different source, but it was the same as we would be getting, or that we knew that it was pure. What are your thoughts? I mean, who's responsible for that, right? Like, that's a lot of power.
Yeah.
That how do we manage that as a society?
So it's something I've thought a lot about. And if I had answers, boy, howdy, I would do something with them.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, do you think but I guess maybe not an impossible question then is, do you agree that that's a significant challenge?
yeah. I mean, that is like, so kind of an interesting way to think about this is, and bear with me through this analogy. What cuttlefish are?
I do
Like
not.
those cephalopod, they're like octopus, like the
Okay.
cephalopod, like they have like wings and the kind of mouth that comes out.
Yeah.
And they change colors to match their environment. They're camouflaging creatures, right? And they can have like, scintillating waves wash over them. They take on different colors and textures to mimic like a snake or the seabed or like seaweed or, a crab. And they're just extremely expressive, very colorful animals. What's interesting about cuttlefish is that they are colorblind. So they do not have the ability to perceive the attributes of the thing that they mimic. So they take on the color of their environment, but they can't see color. And so you think about what would lead to that. Like, how is that possible? And it's the selective pressure that the environment submits all of these animals to. And you can think of taking the light pattern that hits the retina of this cuttlefish, and then there are these cells called chromatophores that take on different colors. And there is a neural network, the nervous system of this animal, that is mapping an input to a behavioral state. And based on that sort of grayscale color pattern, the ones that survive are the ones that can mimic their environment, even in the absence of color data. So the cuttlefish are, the way that a cuttlefish is not aware of this process. It happens to them, and the ones that do not get eaten are able to do it, and the ones that can't die. But it's a behavior that emerges from environmental pressure. Let's think about the machine learning algorithms that power a lot of these social media feeds. The neural networks, biological neural networks, and computational neural networks are not the same. But you think about the economic selective pressures that are operating on businesses and the feedback. These algorithms are not, they do not understand in the way that the cuttlefish does not understand what love or hate or agitation or unrest is. But the algorithms, the parameterizations of the neural networks that select what we are shown, the ones that do not elicit this limbic response, fight or flight, the most like intense human emotions, those are selected against because they are not as evolutionarily fit in the landscape of business. And I think that you have, like, just demonstrably, a situation where we have, Sam Altman talks about social media feeds are the first example of misaligned AI. And that's like actually a really fine point, which is the system did what we told it to. And it turned out to be because we did not fully specify. And remember, taste is the rare commodity. We did not fully specify how we wanted the world to be. we shot and hit the mark, but it was different from where we wanted to go. And so, um, I don't 100%, I just don't think I've worked at these companies. I don't think there's some shadowy cabal
Sure.
that it's like, trying to wreck the world. It is kind of a byproduct of selecting for systems that elicit this behavior in us. And it's, I hope that we can design for a world that does not look like that when it comes to the next generation of these tools.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose you could take it a step further and say that the feeds themselves are, using the cuttlefish example, or the
Yeah.
information that is selected is a result of, and is simply mimicking or representing. It's a product of its environment, and so it's almost a reflection of the people with which it interacts, and therefore that scares the hell out of me. But
Well, well, just to kind of play that out a little bit, these systems are not alive. They're not conscious. There's a bunch of characteristics of consciousness that these systems just do not exhibit. Feedback loops and like proprioceptive, and just like there's a bunch of reasons they're not alive. It's very straightforward. But in the same way that like a football team, if you're like, I like the Colts for a long time. The Indianapolis Colts are still a football team, but it's a different organization. We talk about organization, and like, you can't step into the same river twice. Like, people flow through these structures that are organizations. And much in the same way that like VP level teams, persist and then evolve, I think of algorithms as kind of like whirlpools or eddies in time, in the way that a business is like a collection of self-organizing actors that lead to this. It's like why we've given corporate personhood. It is a thing that is made up of, these individuals, but it changes over time. And I think of the algorithm as kind of similar in this, that it's like the weights and the data that flows through it changes over time, but we still have, colloquially talk about the Facebook newsfeed algorithm. And so it is like this thing that has a life of its own. And it's not that it has once, but it acts on its environment as though it did have once.
yes, in a former life, I studied termites
Yeah.
pretty in depth, and the perfect example is, what is the organism? Is it the termite colony, or is it the individual termite, and all the different caste system? That it's absolutely fascinating, and turned my brain into a pretzel all those years ago. But that was my first sort of look into that window.
Just like a riff on that. I think of a human's relationship to the economy like a termite to the termite mound. And we are participants in all of these systems that we can't see. And back, kind of to put a bow on it and lead to the wrap up here.
Yeah.
Whether it's like I'm in this traffic jam and it like resolves and there's no accident, there's no cop, I don't know why. Or I'm in this pandemic and it's washing over the face of the planet and it's appearing in different cities. And it's like, well, if you understand that it travels along the airline network and then commuter networks, you can actually really model pandemic spreads very effectively. But if you're just like a participant in it, it feels very personal. We are subject to systems that we can't see, but that are real and have structure and process that evolves in time. And I think that AI think about Brightwave and its ability to perceive thousands and thousands of documents simultaneously and connect the dots in a way that really just, it is superhuman in its ability to understand. This is a tool that, can help us better steer this project that we are all part of, because I think it will help us understand those systems more clearly and act in a more opinionated and effective way going forward.
I love that. So regarding Brightwave, if somebody wants to learn more, first of all, you send them to Brightwave. You send them to your website?
Yeah, Brightwave.io. We do 7-day free trials. This product is extremely easy to get your hands on. It is very, very powerful. And, a lot of our competitors play a lot of games, and it's because they just don't have the receipts to back it up. And my system works as I describe it. and you should try it yourself if you want to.
Yeah. Well, I am. So anybody that has a significant amount of information and wants intelligence about a business, is that fair?
Brightwave is a tool that helps professionals understand the world's most complex problems. If you have a pile of documents and you ever find yourself in the situation and needing to make sense of them, goodness, have I got the product for you.
Got it. Gosh. All right. Well, I think, man, Mike, I could talk to you for another like 2 days. You are,
sometime.
You are impressive. And,
appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate just being around you. And I mean, you're one of the smartest folks that I've talked to in terms of the application of all this stuff to real life, real world. So the pleasure was mine. Hey, everybody. Brandon Ansley, host of the Boundary Breakers podcast. I just wanted to take a second and say thank you so much for all of your support over the last year with the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and go hit the like button, rate the episode, depending upon your thoughts, and then leave a comment or two. We'd love to hear some feedback. Also, don't forget that there are more than 50 other podcast episodes for Boundary Breakers on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or any other mainstream podcasting platform. Thank you guys so much. See you the next episode.